Matt George, Locked On Kings, in a very familiar ABC 10 studio with us here on D'Lo and KC, brought to you by Sky River Casino. What's up, Matty Ice?
Welcome to the more negative, pessimistic corner of the office. You got the happy, positive corner back there. Over here, it's just dark clouds and doom and gloom.
Nah, you're a happy guy. You've got a jersey. I think this is Mr. Optimist.
I do have that jersey, and it's a very good purchase, and I'll never be told otherwise. It's up in my closet right next to my black Jimmer Fredette jersey, so it's in a really good, safe place.
So it doesn't get worn a lot, I guess.
I have like 3 Bibby jerseys from when I was a kid. I have a Reggie Theus jersey. I have the Jimmer jersey, and now I have the Optimism jersey. And the Reggie Theus jersey I actually got from a season ticket holder event that my uncle took me to. We had dinner on the court of Arco Arena. And we had dinner with Reggie Theus when he was the head coach at the time, and Jerry Reynolds. And Jerry sat right next to me, and I was a kid. And I still I remind Jerry of this every once in a while. He doesn't remember, but Jerry was so amazing to me. He sat right next to me and talked to me the entire night. Was just super kind to me. Reggie was super cool. And I got a Reggie Theus jersey from that night. So I kept that, and that's still up in the closet too.
That's awesome.
A little cooler than the Jimmer jersey that my ex bought me.
Well, no, you don't have to keep that if you don't want.
Yeah, you're not obligated.
But it was the Black Kings jersey. It's kind of when they did the rebrand. Remember when they had like the knight, the knight with the shield? Like that was kind of cool.
So what if you just throw it on for fun one day, and Brittany says, "Hey, where did you get that one?"
She doesn't know it exists.
Okay. Well, are you? But if she
said, no, hold on.
Where did you
know what? I don't care. I'll happily tell her, because my wife Brittany is a Denver Broncos fan because her ex-boyfriend was a Denver Broncos fan, and she said, I left him, but I couldn't leave the Denver Broncos. I got to stick with the Broncos, even though when you ask her who's her favorite player on the Denver Broncos right now, her answer is Tim Tebow or Peyton Manning.
That feels like the beginning of a Tyler Perry movie right there.
Yeah, well, Brittany, I mean, I'm going to need you to leave the Broncos. It wasn't like a childhood team or anything like that. Like, you met him when you met some random guy. Well, because
whose name was also Matt, by the way.
Matt George.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Repeat that one more time.
Her ex's name is Matt. She has a type. Tall, skinny white dudes named Matt. That's her type.
Your wife.
She needs to be with Raider Nation now.
Okay. I don't know if I want to subject her to that. She could just not watch football. Although one of our first dates we ever went on. So you have to remember, Brittany and I met at a Christian school, which D'Lo has had running a great conversation about the Christian university that I went to.
That's a lie.
He enjoys it a lot. It's a great dinner conversation, and we can talk about it anytime. But so I took her to a Raiders game for one of our first dates, and we're going out there, and I'm like, this is so much fun. I'm excited about this. These are my people. Like, I love this. And she's thinking like Raider fans yelling, screaming. She's like, these aren't your people. You're a good little nice Christian kid. And we get out there, and it was the game that I can't remember the season, but when the Raiders beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday Night Football to snap, they had not won a game yet that season. And it was in the pouring rain. She stuck through the entire game with me, but she heard me cursing out officials and screaming for flags and everything. So she got kind of an idea of who I was at that point in time, but I knew she was a keeper because she sat there in the upper bowl with me the entire game, even in the rain. And I told her at like the end of the third quarter, I'm like, we're freezing. We can leave and go to the car if you want. And she turned to me and she said, never ask that question, or never tell me that ever again. Never tell me to leave a game early again. So I was like, and ring.
She's definitely a keeper. Was that the same Raiders game where late in the game they got a sack?
Yep, and celebrated like 40 yards up the field.
Hurry up.
Yep. Yeah, I can't remember who it was, but they celebrated like 40 yards upfield and got a flag for it. Yeah.
I remember that.
Offense, and they were celebrating this.
They were on the other side of the field from where the play was celebrating. It was like 3 guys.
Raider Nation in a nutshell, right there. Tremendous.
They won the game, though.
Well, they did. Matt, the lottery is behind us. Obviously, that has nothing to do with Sacramento, though. The NBA draft is just 5 weeks from today. I know you've been a little bit reluctant to really start diving into draft stuff, but judging by the latest edition of the Locked On Kings podcast, available wherever you get podcasts from, you've started doing that. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I started diving in a little bit. Had one of my friends, Sam Ferris, on. He's one of our contributors to our Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. And he put together a list of 5 prospects from a wide range of like older prospects, younger prospects, more projects versus like immediate impact type players that he thinks the Sacramento Kings should be keeping their eye on. And should be looking at. And I mean, he didn't necessarily sell all 5 of them to me. He just presented why the 5 of them could be on the radar of the Sacramento Kings. The first one should come as no surprise to anybody. It was Chris Murray. He also had like Gigi Jackson, the power forward out of South Carolina, who is more of like a high offensive prospect that you could stash in the G League. Essentially, he said he's like, Gigi's young, he's raw, but he puts up good numbers and he's exciting. He could come in and the Kings could send him to the G League for a while just to watch him put up good numbers. There's questions about his defense, but he thinks he's someone that could fill that 4 spot eventually for the Kings a couple years down the road. He also thinks even though the Kings are trying to win right now, they're potentially in the best position they've ever been to take on kind of a green or more raw prospect because they have an established system here. They have an established core here, and they have a group that can work with him. He can be involved in a winning culture without having to have too much on his shoulders put right away. So there's kind of the younger route that you can go with like a Gigi Jackson type player. And then he talked about, same thing with like a Noah Clowney, which I kind of really like. And then he brought up like Jaime Jaquez Jr., and I'm trying to remember who else he had in his top 5. Oh, Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine. So these are just 5 guys that kind of a different spectrum that potentially could help the Sacramento Kings some wings. But ultimately, what we focused on is what the Sacramento Kings are going to be looking for out of that 24 spot is either someone that they can develop going forward and give the appropriate time to, or someone who can potentially become an immediate, impactful, rotational player that can continue to grow in his role as the team grows into a championship team 2-3 years down the road. But even if the Kings are drafting Chris Murray, you're not looking at him the same way we were looking at Keegan Murray last year. It's about finding someone who can be either impactful or develop into impactful in his role, not someone who's going to be any kind of game changer.
You know, I know, and I don't have any issue with him if he was drafted here. It'd be all good. I kind of don't want Chris Murray, and it has nothing to do with basketball. It's everything that we talked about. I think let these guys do their own thing in their career. And I understand why people are clamoring for him. He's a great ball player. We love the Murrays, so we'd want him here. It'd be a cool story, but I don't know, man. I kind of feel like, let Chris go do his own thing. Let Keegan do his own thing here.
I think no matter what, Chris is going to be compared to his brother, and he's probably been compared to his brother his entire life, so it's probably nothing new with him. But one of the things we touched on when we were discussing Chris to Sacramento was that he's not Keegan. If he was Keegan, he'd be going much higher in this draft. Now, Sam seems to believe that right around that 18 to 25 range is going to be that sweet spot for Chris. So he very well may be there on draft night. Although a lot of people believe he's going to be going before the Kings are making their selection, which that would be great for Chris. But even though he comes in and provides a similar skill set than Keegan, he doesn't necessarily do anything better than Keegan. But the Kings could obviously use a copy and pasted, slightly worse version of Keegan Murray coming off their bench to help space the floor. But I tend to agree with you, Kenny, in the sense that, like, I think it would be more beneficial for Chris to go elsewhere. Not that he doesn't want to play with his brother, not that he wouldn't succeed here in Sacramento, but to become his own version of himself and to establish himself. And even Fran McCaffrey, his head coach at Iowa and Keegan's head coach at Iowa, when I had him on Locked On a couple of weeks ago, he talked about like how Chris, and I think I talked about this with you guys last week, like Chris made the choice to return to Iowa last year instead of go into the draft where he probably would have been at worst, like two-way contract player. And so that he could kind of develop himself and find his own way a little bit. So I think it's kind of the same thing. It would be great to have both Murray twins here in Sacramento, but ultimately I think I think it might be better for Chris to go elsewhere, but I wouldn't be complaining if he's here in Sac.
Do you think it feels pretty just wide open there once you get that low in the draft at 24? It's just kind of you can plan, you can have an idea, but you're probably, when you're drafting at 4, you don't need to have a lot of different plans. When you're drafting at 24, you got to find like 9 or 10 guys that you like. You got to find a lot of different options there. Do you feel that like that's probably the case here as you started to research these prospects?
Yeah, and be prepared for those 9 or 10 guys to be slotted to go 15th and then slotted to go in the second round at a different point over the next 3 weeks. Like that's what this crop is. Like you're just trying to find a diamond in a rough necessarily, but it's also a pick with less pressure on it. Now, I opened yesterday's podcast talking about this. Like, I believe the Sacramento Kings are going to make a selection with this pick. And my reasoning for that is when you have to think about it less from a talent to help the Kings right now standpoint and think about it from a affordable long-term contract perspective, which is you fill a roster spot with someone who's not going to cost you a bunch of money and someone you have control over for the next 3 to 4 years. And then you have the rights to them beyond that. That fills up a roster spot. And Monty has been so consistent since day one here in Sacramento, talking about flexibility with his roster, flexibility financially. And the Kings have to start making decisions this offseason with the understanding that they're trying to save as much money as they can for Domas's probably max contract or close to it. They got to eventually think about paying Keegan Murray and adding, maybe even bringing Malik Monk back. He's got 1 year left on his deal, and Malik's price is going up the better he plays here in Sacramento. So to draft a player 24th is to lock a roster spot down, even if you want to send them to the G League for a little while, and have a guaranteed cheap player on the books that could be something right away or could be something 2 or 3 years down the road. So I would be more surprised that the Kings move this pick than make a selection. But to your point, there's going to be a laundry list of guys. I don't think we're going to have a situation that we had last year when Monty was coming to the podium on draft night saying, yeah, it was a consensus. Everybody in the draft room thought Keegan was the best player. I think there's going to be a lot of debate as to who to take at that 24. And I think that's great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're going to have they're going to have the opportunity, like you mentioned earlier, to kind of, I know James says, they're that's not really their style, but take a shot on somebody. And I've been talking about Imani Bates, if he's still around. And he's one of those guys that you talked about, Damian, or 1 week I see him at 19. The other week I see him at 24. The next week I see him at 60. You know what I mean? Like they're all over the place with their evaluations sometimes. But he's a guy that had a lot of upside coming out of high school, had a different path to get where he got, but the talent seems to still be there. And to your point, Matt, you could get a possible impact guy, maybe not this year, but next year and years beyond on the rookie contract that is completely different than what you're going to have to play Fox, Sabonis, Murray, Malik Monk, if you want him to stay. And I think that's extremely vital for building this team and trying to keep them at a place where they can either grow or at the very least maintain, be this playoff team while the other guys develop.
I am starting to get a kind of a wishful thinking scenario going in my brain too. I was talking to a couple guys on the air and then off the record about Derek Lively II out of Duke, because he's someone that I've seen, the lowest I've seen him go is like the 20. And in talking to Sam yesterday on the pod, it was like he would have to fall to make it to 24, which fingers crossed for this situation, because here is a big man that can provide immediate shot blocking. He's a 7-footer and actually listed as 7'1". Not necessarily a scorer, a decent rebounder for his size, but he's a shot blocker. And he's someone that ideally could come in and play minutes right away as a rookie. And he doesn't have to start. He doesn't have to play Domantas Sabonis level minutes. It might be 10 to 15 minute stretch. but he can be out there and he can protect the rim and protect the paint, which is something the Kings so desperately need at times when, hey, give Sabonis a little bit of rest, or maybe Sabonis is in foul trouble and it's not layup lines for the remainder of the game. So, I mean, if there's a scenario that very, very early on I've started to kind of like and attach myself to, I've really started to like the idea of Lively.
Monty McNair used the phrase maintain and improve at his exit interview. And I mean, that's a fantastic thing to say. It's also a very easy thing to say, because if everybody was able to do it, teams that made the playoffs will just keep making them. You maintain and improve, maintain and improve. How much improvement do you think the Kings can make through this draft process?
I think minor. The biggest improvement the Kings can make through this draft process is trading the pick. But I also think we have to be realistic about what a 24th pick and what you're willing to move can get you. Like, you're not. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jimmy Butler. Like, you'd love the idea of so we're doing our mock draft, our locked on mock draft, and our poor Detroit Pistons host Koo put out there. He goes, "Anyone interested in the fifth pick?" And I messaged him back and said, "Best I can do is Alex Len number 24." Like in reality, that's what the Kings are kind of doing. It's like Rashawn Holmes in number 24. Like, it's not getting you a game changer. So if the Kings want to improve immediately, they either have to strike gold in the draft, which nobody knows that scenario because it doesn't really exist until it happens, or you have to trade it for a rotational player that you didn't necessarily expect, maybe attach future draft assets or something on top of that within reason and get a player that way. So I'm looking at draft night the same way we've looked at draft night for basically the last 16 years and going, okay, this could be a game changer for the Sacramento Kings. I'm looking at it as add something to help marginal improvement, but going back to Monty McNair's press conference, his exit interview, I still think Monty tipped his hand a little bit in talking about the core improving, the core six. Like, it's going to take those six guys getting better to ultimately take this team to the next level. I'm not necessarily saying simply run it back and you'll be fine, because I think there's little tweaks, of course, to be made and assets to go out and get, especially potentially in the free agency market. But to me, it's once again going to be Fox getting better, Sabonis getting better, Monk getting better, Mitchell getting better, Murray getting better. Those five guys right there, even Kevin Huerter getting better. There are six guys right there. Maybe add Harrison Barnes into that if you bring him back. Those 6 to 7 guys are still going to be the ones to take you as far as you can go.
The K Street Six.
I like it. Put it on a shirt.
Put it on a shirt.
The K Street Six. That, I don't know why. That doesn't feel right. That actually sounds like something else. We should just not do that. Let's void that.
You know, Dubs Nation, the Hamptons 5. No. Settle down.
K Street 6. Goodness gracious. What are your expectations, Matt? We just had this conversation. We talked to Kevin about it too. What are your expectations for next year?
Winning a playoff series. Like I think that's where it starts. And I think, Kenny, you and I had a conversation about this. It might have been on D-Lo and KC. I can't remember, but context is extremely important, right? What does that context look like? Do you get knocked out because of injuries? Do you get knocked out because you get matched up against the team that wins the championship? Whatever. Like, context, of course, is important. But I think ultimately the Sacramento Kings show that they belonged last year. Get back there this year and go further, like build upon it. And that can be looked at from an individual standpoint of Domas having a significantly better playoffs, or De'Aaron Fox establishing himself as an absolute guaranteed all-star, all-NBA second team or above type player. I mean, there's individual ways to classify that growth. And then there's, as a team, make it back to the playoffs and win a playoff series once again. You don't have to have home court advantage. You don't have to be a top 3 seed or top 4 seed. That would be great if they were. I think that's what Kevin said, is he thinks this is going to be a 4 seed or better, which I think that's a fair expectation to have for this team. The number that I think we're really going to pay attention to is the number that Mike Brown brought up, which is, I think it was Mike. It might have been Monty, but one of the two of them brought up 50 or more wins. teams that truly compete for championships typically are in the 50-plus win club. A lot of them 55-plus wins. Now, to go from 48 to 55 is a massive leap, even if it doesn't seem like it. Like that's pretty significant. That's the gap between good and great that Mike Brown has talked a lot about, how hard that is. But I think for the regular season, the goal should be 50-plus wins, and the postseason should be winning a playoff series. But G-Man pointed out, I think it was G-Man that pointed out on Locked On Kings last week, that when the Kings started their amazing run in the late 90s and early 2000s, I think the first 2 years of the playoffs, they were first-round exits. So it doesn't mean it's not the end of the world if the Kings make it to the first round, to Kenny's point, and they get knocked out by whatever team. It's not the end of the world as long as they, again, show that they belong there. The only thing they can't have is a season of regression, or what I'm concerned about is a season of now teams know who you are and you can't assert yourself the same way. Like teams know who the Kings are now. The Kings aren't catching anybody by surprise. Can they still be so good, especially offensively? They're so damn good that even if you know who they are, you can't consistently stop them. I think that's a big thing.
And to G-Man's point as well, they were both ace seeds those years. So the one year they played the Jazz, ace seed. I'm sure if D'Lo and KC was around then, now it's time to move up. I'm thinking 60, maybe home court advantage. The team was ace seed. And they were down 2-0 to the world champions, but they didn't really hit their stride until the third season, which makes what we saw this year even more amazing because, they were able to get as high in the standings as they were their first go around. But I really think, and I understand the expectations of winning a playoff series, but I really do believe it's really just important for them to get back to the playoffs. Like if they get there, for maybe this is the last time we say this, but if they get there, mission accomplished. But they have to start showing that consistent, hey, we're a perennial playoff team. And when they go to draft or when they have the mindset of trying to get free agents, we're a perennial playoff team. We're trying to get to the next level. Now we're trying to win a couple series. But you can't necessarily say that if you're one and done, and you don't make the playoffs.
I think the Western Conference is extremely important in this conversation too, because 48 wins this year got you the third seed. What does the 48 wins get you next year? What does 50 wins get you next year? Like there are going to be some teams that you expect to fall out. There's going to be other teams that to be determined. There's going to be teams like Oklahoma City that I think are going to be suddenly really good. Like I think Oklahoma City is going to have a potential season of like a colossal rise season the same way the Kings did this year. Like I think OKC's primed for something like that. I mean, Victor Wembanyama is going to the San Antonio Spurs. I'm not saying they're a playoff team now, but if he's as good as advertised, how far along is that Spurs team? Like, I mean, you could talk about teams in the cellar, but maybe the Rockets get better. I mean, maybe the Portland Trailblazers get better if they truly are going to go all in to try and build it around Dame one more time. Like, there are a lot of teams in the West right now that are going for it. The Dallas Mavericks are still going to try to be there. So, again, the Kings could be just as good, but so many teams are going for it that next year they're the 5th seed. Well, them dropping 2 spots one season, let's say they win 48 games next season again, they stay the exact same win total, and they're a 5th seed. That's not, they're not improving, or that they're not going backwards. They're fine. They're in the same position. So how the West shakes out too is extremely important in that conversation.
Quick side note: it's funny. I've got Kings Nets on in my studio here in the office, and everybody's wearing Band-Aids.
Oh, the Band-Aid game.
Everybody's got fresh as the Band-Aid under his eye.
That's tremendous.
That was a moment for about a week or so.
Why did we not wear Band-Aids for Game 7?
I don't know. That would have brought it all home.
We absolutely should have wore Band-Aids for Game 7. Shoot.
Drop the ball.
What do you think happens with Portland? You mentioned them a second ago. They're such a wild card in this Western Conference. I mean, there's a lot of we were talking about this earlier. Like, I don't know what to think of Phoenix. I don't know what to think of the Clippers. Portland is in one of the most unique spots headed into the draft. You know what number 1's doing. Mm-hmm. You know number 2's drafting. You might not necessarily know who, but you're pretty confident you know who number 2 that Charlotte is drafting a player. Mm-hmm. I have no clue what Portland is doing at 3.
I think this is a point of no return decision for Portland in the sense that like if Scoot is there, I think you take him. I understand you have Dame in Portland, but like at this point, I don't know what you're getting for 3 that you're putting next to Dame that instantly vaults you into. They're not talking about just getting back to the playoffs. They've been there, done that for years. They're trying to win a championship with Dame. 3 is not getting you a championship. You're so far away from that. Even if you have some of your young players continue to develop, like Shaedon Sharpe continues to develop, I think he's going to be excellent. Like, I think he's going to be really, really solid. Shaedon Sharpe, a decent player that you get for 3, because you're not getting a superstar for 3 unless something crazy happens. And Dame Lillard are not winning you a championship in the Western Conference or in the NBA period. It's just not. I think that's time, personally, and this is very easy to say from this perspective, I think it's time to move on from Dame. And I don't think it's Dame's fault. I don't think it's Portland's fault. I think, like, you take Scoot, you have a Scoot Sharpe core to start building around, a rebuild, truly commit to it, get what you can for Dame in terms of draft assets like Oklahoma City has done or like the Utah Jazz did for that ridiculous Rudy Gobert trade. Like, get something and start building now and say, Dame, thank you so much. We can't give you here what we want to give you. If they had won the lottery and Victor came in here, even Dame and Victor aren't winning a championship right away, but you have something there and you're probably feeling a little more patient, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I take Scoot and I'm saying, Dame, I'm going to do the best that I can to put you in a situation that's great for us, but also helps you try and win a title right now. I think that's the route that the Portland Trailblazers should go on. Kind of the same way I think the Dallas Mavericks, they won't ever do this, but should be looking to move to some capacity Luka Doncic to try and get themselves out of where they're at. I just don't think the Portland Trailblazers can go where they want to go with Dame Lillard at this point. I think they're stuck.
I agree 100% with you on both fronts. I think Dallas is probably a year away, a missed playoff appearance away next year from thinking about that with Luka. But if I was Portland, as crazy as it seems, I'd probably do the same thing. You know, I'd look to move on from Dame. This is probably the highest value that you'd be able to get a return for Dame Lillard. I'll play devil's advocate though, and we talk about Scoot. The funny thing about prospects and the draft and all this other stuff is you pray that Scoot is what Dame was. Mm-hmm. And he's probably not going to reach it. And I love Scoot, but Dame is, come on, we talking about one of the greatest ever. Mm-hmm. We pray that he's that. But that's what happens with the draft. Oh, that reminds me. Did you see that other quote from our guy?
No.
Where he said, I'm telling you right now, mm-hmm. I want to be perfectly clear when I say this right now. If Victor Wembanyama is Anthony Davis, if he's Hakeem Olajuwon, that's a disappointment.
So just because you weren't yelling at the top of your lungs, that was Draymond.
No.
That was Chris Broussard.
That was Chris Broussard.
You needed to be a little louder to be Chris Broussard. Why does anyone listen to that man anymore? What are you doing?
He said another player too.
Dude.
I can't remember who it was. He said 3 players. He's like, yeah, if he's that, it's a disappointment.
People are weird, man. I don't know.
He said AD, KD, or Hakeem. That's a disappointment.
Agreed. Welcome to the off season.
Good Lord, man. Well, the off season's not here yet, Matt. What do you think? Who you got in these final 2 series here?
I think it's going to be Denver, Boston. I really think it's. But boy, do I love Miami right now. I'm just having so much fun with Miami, and I'd be having so much more fun about the idea of a 7 and 8 seed NBA Finals if the damn Lakers weren't number 7. Like, I think if you separate the Lakers or you separate the fandom element that I can't not bring to the table when talking about Los Angeles, like we're getting a really cool like NBA Finals potential. We're getting a really cool playoffs period. Like these playoffs have been amazing, and the ratings have reflected that. Right. So these playoffs have been really, really cool. Amazing stories. Jimmy Butler's been incredible. I mean, the LeBron James Lakers, their turnaround, their quick turnaround has been really, really cool, despite it being despicable. I mean, it's if any matchup that we get in the NBA Finals, I'm excited about. Honestly, Boston making it to the NBA Finals, sorry, Jesse, is probably the most boring because they were just there last year, but they're still very exciting. So any combination, I think, is a lot of fun. I think we're getting Denver and Boston, but if we get Denver, Miami, or LA, Miami, or LA, Boston, actually, I'd hate LA, Boston if we're being real. Then
Jesse's this close to hitting the end broadcast button.
That's okay. That's okay, Jesse. He hasn't been listening.
You guys don't even know you're running ESPN program in the last half hour.
Jesse's so sick of this show today.
What I appreciate about Jesse, though, is I've been in that chair, Jesse, and Jesse can tune you out and not listen and still be on top of the show. Whereas when I tune you out and not listen, some former King drops a cuss word on the air and then I get in trouble for it. So well done, Jesse.
Happens. Yeah, it happens. Oh, man, that's good stuff. Do you think the Lakers, you brought up the Lakers a second ago being the 7th seed, are both, this actually for both of you, because I kind of think I know what Kenny's going to say. Do you think they're back next year? Like they were, what were they? You said 7th. Are they a top 4 team next year, top 6 team next year?
If they keep this group together, I think they're a top 6 seed. I don't think they're a play-in team next year.
But isn't there one really, really important thing that whole situation is based on? They can't be a top 6 team if Anthony Davis doesn't play. I guess it's what's the number,
right?
Like what
did he play this year? 53.
Ooh, he missed a lot. I think it was.
Well, maybe the Lakers are proving, like this version of the Lakers are proving. And again, both those guys are another year older, which we've been saying that for LeBron for the last 6 years.
Well, LeBron doesn't count. LeBron has thoroughly defeated Father Time.
Right. So, I mean, maybe this version of the Lakers is proving they can be a play-in team, and 1 extra game, 2 extra games, doesn't matter if they can go this far and go the distance like they're poised to do. So maybe the regular season truly doesn't matter to a team built that way.
When that new group came over, LeBron was out.
He was out, yeah.
But AD was in.
AD came back and played well. You know, the sneaky thing about them, and I don't know how this works out. Maybe they're able to do this and it's no issue, but they got some major free agents. Austin Reeves needs a new contract. Rui needs a new contract, and D'Angelo Russell needs a new contract.
Chris Haynes reported, I think Rui's starting tonight.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know Chris Haynes mentioned that this morning that there's a possibility that Rui starts tonight.
Yeah,
there might be a bidding war for a couple of those guys.
A bidding war! I love bidding wars.
Not necessarily here in Sacramento, although I think Rui Hachimura should be something for the Kings to keep their eyes on for sure. But I mean, I think Austin Reeves. I think Austin Reeves is building off of the same hype that Alex Caruso built off of, which is all power to you. But he's still a good ball player. But I mean, D'Angelo Russell is really good, like, and has been really good consistently. D'Angelo Russell was the reason why I was afraid of a Kings-Lakers series, or the most reason to be afraid of a Kings-Lakers series, because D'Angelo Russell has historically just destroyed the Kings, whether it was the big comeback when he was on Brooklyn, or his time in Minnesota, and now his time in Los Angeles. Like, he's a Kings killer. So I think D'Angelo Russell, bringing him back for sure for the Lakers should be an absolute top priority, because he is a really, really good piece of that team that has so much attention drawn to other guys. And then even like Lonnie Walker, I think Lonnie Walker's a free agent too. And Walker's built his legacy kind of off of one game, but he's a solid rotational piece that you don't have to ask questions about. So Lakers have work to do, but they're the Lakers. They'll always find a way to do something right.
Yeah, not very many go, I don't want to be in LA anymore. Like Austin Reeves is a star in Los Angeles. Like, he's a legitimate star there. It'll be there. There's a lot of interesting storylines to follow, and you can follow them all over on the Locked On Kings podcast.
Oh, we ain't talking Lakers over there, though.
Oh, definitely not. We're talking NBA draft. We're talking the Sacramento Kings, and we are 5 weeks away from the NBA draft. And the truly exciting part about that is 5 weeks from now, we're 1 week away from the start of free agency.
Yeah, there we go.
And that's where we really get cooking. So make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Kings podcast wherever you get podcasts from, or for those watching, you could subscribe over on YouTube as well. Big